I'll stand to the side.
Good evening. In the Bible in front of your pew, it's page 572, moving on to page 573. It's Isaiah 8:22 through 9:7. And they will look to the earth, but behold, distress and darkness, the gloom of anguish, and they will be thrust into thick darkness. But there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish. In the former time he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the latter time he was made glorious, the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff for his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For every boot of the tramping warrior in battle tumult, and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the incense of his government and of peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this.
John 1, verse 4 through 5. In him was life, and the life was the light of men.
The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
There it is. Good job, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. There we go. We made it. All 5 are lit. I was talking with a friend the other day at lunch, and he noted that it seems like everywhere you look, you see death. It seems like everywhere you look, you see darkness and death, and I think he's right. The world is a really broken place right now, isn't it? You look at the news, and all you see is bad news. There are wars raging and starting all over the place. There are school shootings. There's senseless murder. There's a genocide in Nigeria right now targeting Christians. We turn on the news, and all we see is bad news. We watch these terrible things, and when we're watching these terrible things, what we're seeing is what we would call the powers and principalities at work. It's the dark, shadowy forces behind the veil. The dark, shadowy forces that are pulling the curtain, or pulling the strings behind the curtain. And these really obvious things are obvious outworkings of that darkness. Paul, all over the New Testament, he tells us of these dark, inky forces. And these dark, shadowy forces first won their victory in the garden, way back in Genesis chapter 3. When Satan, the prince of darkness, tempted Adam and Eve fell, plunging themselves and the whole world into darkness and death. And these shadowy forces are at work in these big things, but they're also at work in much smaller things. Our addictions and sin struggles, our marriages, our sicknesses, our family struggles, our conflicts at work, our discouragement to live out the Christian life. And so often we look at the news and we feel the pressure of the darkness all around us, and it leads us to a place of utter hopelessness. We feel the pressure and we sin ourselves, and we're watching the news, and it gets us to a point where we cry out, God, why don't you intervene? The good news of Christmas is that He has. Christmas is God's intervention. It's Jesus taking the fight to them. Christmas is an offensive move. When Jesus shows up, He's not just playing defense, He's actively going on the offense. He's invading the powers and the principalities. He's showing up in the midst of darkness. He comes into this filthy, broken world and lives among filthy, broken people. In Isaiah, in the passage that the Beasleys just read, this darkness problem has a prophesied solution. The people of Israel have plunged into great darkness because they've put their trust in other governments. And these very governments that they're trusting in will soon prey on them. The Assyrians will invade Galilee and bring with them great death and darkness. We have a tendency to separate the physical reality from the spiritual reality, but the biblical perspective fully unites these two. The physical outworkings within this world are the result of spiritual outworkings. The physical darkness is a result of spiritual darkness. And for Israel during the time of Isaiah, the physical outworking was the Assyrians bringing death and darkness. And the Assyrians plunged them into death and darkness physically because of the spiritual aspect. But the promise of Isaiah is that this darkness will not last. And that into the darkness, into the gloom, into the very people who live in darkness, into a darkness in which they've brought upon themselves, a great light will shine. Isaiah promises that a light will show up, a light in the very region of the darkness. The light will show up in Galilee, right where the Assyrians invade. Right into this mess, into this darkness, into this filth, a light will shine. God strikes back against this darkness, and He brings a light to the people who dwell in darkness. God will strike down the powerful forces of darkness, the things that oppress and bring pain to the people. He will overthrow these powers. The yoke of burden will be broken, and not only that, He will stop war altogether. How will God accomplish this great feat? What is God's solution to oppression, pain, and darkness? It's the birth of a child. The dark, shadowy forces that are at work behind the curtain, the forces that are at work against us, the forces that motivate all the death and darkness that we see at work in the world, our own sins and our own struggles, the way God strikes back at all of this darkness is the birth of a baby. And not just any baby, but a baby who is both man and God. A baby who will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. And so the solution to all of the brokenness in the world, the solution to all of the pain and the suffering and the sin and the sorrow is not a better form of government. It's not a better economic philosophy. The solution is a person, and His name is Jesus. And it's only through His rule that things will get any better. What I'm trying to stress is that when we celebrate Christmas, we're celebrating the fact that God goes on the offense. We're celebrating the good news that God has, in fact, intervened. This good news was prophesied in Isaiah, and it's fulfilled Christmas Day. It's fulfilled in John 1, verses 4 through 5, what was also read. At the birth of Jesus at Christmas Day, it's God bringing the fight to them, so to speak. It's a light shining into the darkness. Jesus being born is something of an invasion. Jesus is invading the place of darkness itself. He's invading the broken world that we live in. He comes into the world full of darkness, sin, and death. When we celebrate Christmas, we're celebrating that Jesus, the Messiah, has invaded the darkness. This is what John was talking about. The light has come, the light of mankind, and the light shines in the darkness. In John, darkness is just not the absence of light, but it's the active presence of evil. And it's to this situation that Jesus shows up. Into the presence of evil and death, Jesus comes as light. And in Jesus' offensive move, the darkness is defeated. Remember the end of verse 5. The darkness there, it grapples with the light. It tries to overthrow the light, but it is handily defeated. The darkness is not powerful enough. John does not view the light and the darkness as equal forces battling it out. He sees the light, Jesus, as so much more powerful, so much more superior. The darkness tries to fight back, but it's a hopeless fight. The light is so much more powerful than the darkness, so much so that it's defeated by a child. Dane Ortland, and I know we've been quoting him a lot, me and John, but he's got a really good book. He's talking about this passage in Isaiah. He says, God's answer to everything that has ever terrorized us, death, darkness, pain, suffering, sin, sickness, etc., is a child. The power of God is so far superior to the Assyrians and all the big shots of this world that he can defeat them by coming as a mere child. His answers to the bullies swaggering through history is not to become an even bigger bully. His answer is Jesus. Now, this gives us great hope. The darkness does not stand up to the light in any way, shape, or form. It simply cannot. Jesus is far greater than the darkness that we feel so deeply. And when Jesus takes the fight to the enemy, when he makes his offensive move, when Jesus invades the place of darkness, when he comes into the world full of sin and filth, darkness loses and he wins. This is good news, isn't it? And the good news of Christmas is that God's plan to put the world right has been launched. Jesus has won. John makes it really clear that part of Jesus' mission was to overthrow the darkness, and Jesus does this by dying on a cross. He doesn't do this through military might. If you've read through the other Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you'll see that Jesus is constantly casting out demons from people. But in John, only one demon is cast out. And it happens in chapter 12, verse 31. Jesus, he's telling his followers about his upcoming death. And he says to them, because his death is coming, judgment has come upon this world, and now the ruler of the world, Satan, will be cast out. The ruler of the world, Satan, the prince of darkness, the ruler of the dark, shadowy forces, is cast out. Just like when Jesus cast the demons out from the people, Satan is cast out on the cross. On the cross, Jesus accomplishes something of an overthrow. The ruler of the world is dethroned. Later in chapter 14, Jesus is again anticipating his death, and he speaks of his death as a sort of battle between him and Satan, and he says, "The ruler of the world is coming, yet he has no power over me." It's not a fair fight. And again, Jesus says, talking about, in chapter 16, talking about the activity of the Spirit after he leaves, he says, the Spirit will be able to work because the ruler of this world has been condemned. And so not only has Jesus made an offensive move, but he has won. In Colossians chapter 2, Paul picks up this idea. He says that when Jesus came and when he died, he disarmed the rulers and authorities. So much so that Jesus' death makes a public display, a laughingstock of these dark forces. Romans 8, Paul tells us that on the cross, sin itself is condemned. The very evil inside of us is condemned. The good news of Christmas is that Jesus has come to save his people from darkness, and he has won. Now, this is good news. It's not just good advice. And like any good news, it changes everything. The solution to all the darkness has come, and for those of us who believe in Jesus, we are caught up into that solution. In our own lives, the darkness and sin and the filth, it has been paid for on the cross. And in its place, we receive new life. God's program to fix the world has been launched, and he's started in us. But Toby, you might say, the world is still broken. In a lot of ways, it actually feels like darkness is like a wounded animal in the corner, much more dangerous than it was before. The gospel says that something has happened, that Jesus has come, that he's invaded the darkness, that he lived in the filth, and he died and rose again in victory. And this thing that has happened, it changes everything for those of us who are in him. But the gospel also tells us that something will happen. The transformation that we have begun to experience will happen to all of creation. An illustration might help. Historians, they look back at World War II, and they view D-Day as the decisive day for the war in Europe. Once the Allies stormed the beach and they conquered the beachhead and they secured it, that was the turning point. At that point, Hitler and the Nazis had already lost. And within a year, the Allies finish what they started, and there's Victory in Europe Day. And people begin rebuilding and getting back to their normal lives. Something has happened. The victory has been won decidedly, and that victory changes everything for us in the moment. And something will happen. That victory will stretch to the edges of the cosmos. Philippians 2, verses 7 through 11 explains this really well. It says, "But he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form." That's Christmas. That's what we're celebrating. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. This is what has happened. By this death, the powers of darkness have been overthrown and sin itself condemned. Therefore, because of his victory, God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every other name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Christmas launches God's plan to put the world right. Jesus' death and resurrection is the means of that plan. He defeats sin and darkness, and in its place, he brings new life. That fundamentally changes us if we believe in Jesus. Sin and darkness has lost, and we have been given a new life. The victory has been won, and as we celebrate his first coming, it's helpful to anticipate his second coming. Jesus will return in glory. He will come as a rider on a white horse in the clouds. He will be wearing a robe dripping in blood, and on his head there will be many crowns. Everyone will see him. No one can deny him. And when he returns, he will make us like him. All this sickness, all this sin, all this death we've been suffering will be taken away. Every knee will bow. The corrupt governments will bow. The dark forces will bow. Satan will bow. The evil people committing genocides will bow. The people who hurt and abuse us will bow. All of the darkness will bow to our King, and we will bow to him as well. That's good news, isn't it? When Jesus comes again, he will fix everything. All that is broken and wrong in creation, he will make right. He will banish all sickness and sadness. He will abolish death itself. The Bible ends with a scene from this future in which we're hoping for. And there is no temple because God is with us and we are with him. And there's also no sun because the Lamb himself will be our light. And there will be no night, no more darkness, only daylight. And so as we celebrate Christmas, we're celebrating his first coming, and we anticipate his second. In the meantime, while we're living in this gap where things are still hard, things are still painful, another Dane Ortland quote is really helpful. He says, "Let us look at Jesus. As the wonderful counselor, he has the best ideas and strategies, so let's follow him. As the mighty God, he defeats his enemies easily, so let's hide behind him. As the everlasting Father, he loves us endlessly, so let's enjoy him. As the Prince of Peace, he reconciles us while we were still his enemies, so let's welcome him." In a moment, we're going to sing some more songs, and we're going to light candles. During that time, I want us to reflect on what happens to darkness in the presence of light. It vanishes. It's not a battle, it's not a fight, it's simply over. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to have Wes come up, and we'll do some more singing and candles. John and I will light the candles and then pass them out. As a way of reminder, the person with the lit candle keeps their candle upright, and the person with the non-lit one bends it over. Mia is rejoicing in her seat wherever she's at. I'm going to pray. Lord, we're really thankful for Christmas this evening. We're really thankful that you entered into the world. You came to this broken, hurting, sinful world. You became a human like us in order to die and pay the penalty for our sin, and in order to fix everything that has been broken. I pray that we would be a people who are incredibly thankful for this, and a people who hope in the second coming when you return and fix everything and abolish death itself. It's in your name that I pray. Amen.